A quick new idea, daily, from the world's greatest TEDx talks. I'm your host, Atossa Leoni, and this is TEDx Shorts. At age 16, Tim Donor was labeled the world's youngest polyglot by the Huffington Post. In other words, he was a teenager who was fluent in more than 6 languages. Tim is now a recent graduate of Harvard and Cambridge, and in today's talk, he shares that what he learned in his multilingual education was more than just vocabulary. It was a vessel to better connect and understand broader histories and cultures.
I was featured in a New York Times article called Adventures of a Teenage Polyglot, which featured my passion for learning foreign languages, this peculiar hobby that I had. And at first I thought it was great. I loved the fact that language learning was getting more attention. I loved the fact that what had always seemed like an isolating hobby was suddenly putting me into contact with people all around the world. Yet as I spent more time in the media spotlight, the focus of my story began to shift. So whereas I'd always been interested in talking about the why and the how, why I was learning foreign languages, how I did it, instead, it turned into a bit of a circus in which media shows wanted to sensationalize my story. So it would go a little something like this. Hello, I'm here today with 17-year-old Timothy Donor, who is fluent in 20 languages. Oh, I'm sorry, he actually can insult you in 25 languages and is fluent in another 10. How about a tongue twister in Chinese? Well, we could talk about Chinese. You know, a lot more Americans are learning Chinese these days, and I think there's a lot of value in that. No, just give us a tongue twister. 吃葡萄不吐葡萄皮儿，不吃葡萄倒吐葡萄皮儿. This guy. Tim, how about another tongue twister in Chinese? I would prefer not to, but, we could talk about China. You know, there's a lot that you can gain by learning a language. Oh, Tim, I'm sorry, that's all the time we have. Now, why don't you tell our audience goodbye in Turkish, and we'll be over here. You know, we haven't talked about anything substantive, but Turkish, please. Haydi bakalım. Tamam. Güle güle ve çok teşekkür ederim. How about that kid, right? Wonder if he gets any girls. Now, stay with us, because up next, a skateboarding bulldog in a bathing suit. As funny as that was, it highlighted 2 pretty major problems in the way my story was covered. On a personal level, I felt that language learning was now becoming like a bit of a task, almost. It felt like something that was suddenly had to be rigidly organized, something that had to be compartmentalized, rationalized, expressed in a concrete number. I speak X languages, I know Y languages, as opposed to what I'd always done, which was just learning languages for the fun of it, learning to communicate with people, learning about foreign cultures. And on a bigger level, it cheapened what it meant to speak a language or to know a language. Now, if I can impart you with anything today at TEDxTeen, it's that knowing a language is a lot more than knowing a couple words out of a dictionary. It's a lot more than being able to ask someone where the bathroom is or telling them the time of day. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I actually was a child actor before I learned any languages. And I always had a little bit of a gift for accents. So I would go into auditions for radio commercials or for TV commercials. That taught me the basics of how to break down sound, how to pick up a foreign accent or foreign speech patterns, and really live with it. Now, fast forward a little bit, March 24th, 2011. As I was studying more languages, using grammar books or watching TV shows in, let's say, Arabic or Hebrew became one way of focusing my time. So on that night, while I was awake till some ungodly hour, I recorded myself speaking Arabic into my computer screen, subtitled it, and I uploaded it to YouTube under the title, Tim Speaks Arabic. Tim يتكلم اللغة العربية. Next day I did the same thing, Tim מדבר عברית. Tim Speaks Hebrew. And the comments, when they trickled in, were fantastic. I got things like, wow, I've never seen an American speak Arabic before. In addition to that, I got things like, wow, maybe you should fix your vowels here, or maybe this word is pronounced this way. So suddenly, language learning had gone from the solitary pages of a book or my computer screen into the wide world. After that, I was hooked. I had a community of speakers to interact with, and I essentially had a teacher or conversational partners for any language that I wanted to do. That became my way of reaching out to the world. But as I was learning all these languages, I faced a number of obstacles. In fact, I'm sure many of you, if you were told you have to learn Pashto by next month, you wouldn't know what to do. So I experimented. Here's one thing. So in my Latin class, I read about something that Cicero described called method of loci, or technically locorum. But it's a technique in which you take mnemonics. So let's say you want to learn 10 vocab words on a list. You take each of those words, and instead of memorizing them in blocks, you integrate them into your spatial memory. So here's what I mean. Union Square. It's a place I go every day. If I close my eyes, I can imagine it very, very vividly. So I imagine myself walking down Union Square, and at each spot in my mind that has resonance, I associate it with a vocab word. I'll show you right now. I'm walking down Park Avenue, and in Japanese, to walk is iku. I go a little bit further, turn right, sit on the steps where I can suwaru. Directly north of there is a statue of George Washington, which I used to think was a fountain, so that's nomu, to drink. Right next to that is a tree that you can kiru, cut. If you want to go north to a Barnes & Noble, you can yomu, to read. Or if I'm hungry and I want to go to my favorite falafel place, I can go 1 block west of there, so I can taberu, to eat. So I found that most of the time, by experimenting with methods like these, it made language learning a much more interactive experience. It made it something that I could remember much better and I had a lot of fun with. So you may be wondering, what's the point in doing this? Why learn Pashto or Ojibwe when you live in New York? And there's a point to that. In fact, I've lived in New York my entire life, and I'm always blown away by the number of languages you can hear on a given day. Walking down the street, I see billboards in Chinese or in Spanish. I see Russian bookstores, Indian restaurants, Turkish bathhouses. So as I started to play around more with language learning, I found that I had my own community of learners here in New York. I would go out to outer boroughs and, for lack of a better word, embarrass myself. I try to talk to people all day, get their views on things, and use my newfound language skills. So maybe you have to use a lot of English. Maybe you're not really that articulate or interesting when you talk, but the point is you're getting out there and you're getting exposure. So as I've begun to see, there's an enormous connection between language and culture, language and thought. And we say bless you, even though that has no real religious connotation now when people sneeze, right? So it's interesting if you think about the fact that linguists believe language doesn't inherently affect the way you think, right? There's no language that'll make you a math genius. There's no language that'll make logic problems impossible to understand. But there's a real tie between language and culture. There's so much language can tell you about one culture's mindset. Now again, you brushing up on your Spanish, going to Japanese class, is not going to stop language death. But what it does do is begin to open up your mind to the idea that language, in essence, represents a cultural worldview. And if I can impart you with anything today at TEDxTeen, it's this. You can translate words easily, but you can't quite translate meaning.
The TEDx talk you just listened to was recorded at a TEDx event in London, England. All TEDx events are independently organized by volunteers who believe in TED's mission of ideas worth spreading. Special thanks to the organizing team at TEDxTeen. Want to listen to more TEDx talks? Explore the entire archive on the TEDx YouTube channel. I'm Atossa Leoni. Thanks for listening, and see you tomorrow.